The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
God of many names, we assemble here as individuals with our own hopes and fears and circumstances and families. Keep those whom we love in your care. Bless the people we hold dear. We assemble here today as representatives of diverse people from all parts of Minnesota, people with hopes and fears and dreams of their own, people whose very lives are in our hands. Keep our people in your care. Bless them and protect them. We are ever mindful of the trust of our people and ask for your wisdom and guidance as we work together today for the common good. Bless us and inspire us. Work through us and help us to work together. Give us stamina and patience and humor, that we might accomplish amazing outcomes for all of your people. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Mary Kitchell from Silver Lake United Methodist Church in Oakdale, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will take the roll.
The clerk will close the roll. Quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 90th Session, 2017, 23rd day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Thursday, March 2nd, 2017.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Comparison reports. There's a copy of this order of business on each member's desk. If there's no objection, the motions will prevail. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail and the substitutions will be made. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business has been placed on each member's desk. If there's no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading House File number 593.
Second reading.
Second reading House File number 629.
Second reading.
Second reading House File number 1147.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1242.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1293.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1390.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1519.
Second reading. Second reading of Senate files.
Second reading Senate File 218.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction of first reading of House Files 2066 through 2185.
First reading, House files 2066 through 2185. Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 778. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 778, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority, the second engrossment.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson S., to introduce your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, this is the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority Stadium Bill. In this legislation, we do several things, and I'm going to go section by section just to make sure that everybody's aware of what's part of the bill. If you look at Section 1, this piece of legislation is dealing with the data classification piece. When this issue was raised about access to the information of who was using the suites, we were told by the MSFA board that this data was non-public data. This changes it to make sure that there is no question about this being public data and makes it available to anybody that wishes to see it. On Section 2, we changed the composition of the board so that the 4 legislative leaders each get a citizen appointment, governor gets 1 appointment, and the city of Minneapolis gets 1 appointment. We also, on Section 3, changed the compensation of the board chair. Currently, the board chair is making over $130,000, where this brings it back more in line with what traditionally has been the practice for the board chair and makes that compensation the same as all of the other board members. Section 4 is about the chair selection. Under current situation, the governor appoints the chair. This changes it so that the chair is selected by the other board members. On Section 5, we also deal with the executive director compensation to put in line with the governor's salary. On Section 6, we're dealing with the budget reporting, making sure that the budget has to be submitted to MMB and provide greater oversight here from the executive branch and the legislative branch as well. On Section 7, this is prohibiting political activities for the staff of the MSFA. They have about 7 staff members. This would say that they would not be able to participate in political activities. Section 8 is the legislative report change, making sure that MSFA has to provide an annual report to the legislature on their operating to increase greater transparency. Section 9 is dealing with the stadium suite use policy. This is what kind of kicked off the issue altogether. If you remember, in November, it was revealed that the MSFA authority was giving out seats to their friends and family members. And in fact, over 61% of the seats in the suites was going to friends and family. Another $32,000 was spent on friends and family for food as well as parking. And so this changes the suite use policy so that it is used for the marketing purposes and not for the benefit of friends and family of the MSFA board members. On Section 10, this deals with the Code of Conduct. When we had the Office of the Legislative Auditor give a report on their analysis of the MSFA, it was their recommendation that we have the MSFA abide by the Code of Conduct to make sure this sort of thing does not happen in the future. And then on top of it, Section 11 is dealing with the reserves and having greater oversight from the legislative process on the reserves. Section 12 is on the suite use recovery. So this, for those individuals that were friends and family that benefited from this perk that no other Minnesota citizen had access to, we say that we are going to recover those costs and make sure that it helps to pay down the debt of the stadium. Section 13 is just cleanup language recommended by nonpartisan staff. And then Section 13 is the effective dates for the board, which will be July 1st. Members, what we've heard throughout the different committees on this process is we have a problem with this. The MSFA board obviously has been acting outside of what I think the typical Minnesotan would be expecting. And I think yesterday in the report that was revealed, it was another example of the stadium board using their appointment to abuse the system. We had a situation where the MSFA board chair got to jump the line, budge in line in front of season ticket holders and got suite tickets on the 50-yard line for friends and family and associates. This is very clear that we need to make these changes. There has been a history pattern, if you will, of abuse within the MSFA, and this is our opportunity to right this wrong and put us back on track, and making sure that this is clearly the people's stadium and not the stadium of special interests and friends and family of certain individuals. So with that, I'd ask for your support. Thank you.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
And Anderson S. moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment, and the amendment is coded A22.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the committee process, we had recommendations from legislators about looking at other stadiums. It is my intent that we look at other stadiums in the state of Minnesota that have received public funds to make sure that they are being properly managed. In December, I reached out to all the other stadiums. I reached out to Target. I reached out to both Target Field, Target Center. I reached out to the Excel Center as well. And asked that they provide us with details about how do they manage their public space. Do they have a suite? If so, is any official receiving access to these suites and so forth? And so I've been gathering that information since December. This then asks, also given the feedback that I've received from legislators during the committee process, that the legislative auditor perform a review. And so the legislative auditor would take a look at each of these entities to see if there's anything further action that we need to enact. And that's it in a nutshell. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Discussion on the A22 amendment. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the A22 amendment signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Anderson S. moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A29.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson S., to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This changes the 7th appointment so that we have an odd-numbered board, and it changes it from the legislative auditor to the legislative coordinating commission, that person be a certified public accountant, and that's what the amendment does.
Discussion on the 829 amendment. The member from Hennepin, Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And would Representative Anderson yield for a question?
She will yield. Representative Nelson.
Representative Anderson, so with this amendment which we talked about in committee, and I have an amendment similar to this, but putting the CPA in there, would the legislative auditors still be auditing the Metropolitan Sports Facility Commission?
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Nelson, yes.
Any further discussion on the 829 amendment? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the 829 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Liebling moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A19.
Recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling, to introduce your amendment.
Mr. Speaker and members, thank you. Representative Anderson, I'm glad that you're taking on this, this quest. I think when we see people use their authority in ways that are to get special privileges that other Minnesotans can't get, that is distressing. And it's distressing to me no matter what party they belong to, no matter who appointed them. I think that it is incumbent on us as elected officials and people who are appointed to positions to serve the public to not think that we're better than other people and that we get special privileges. That is simply unacceptable, and I think that all the members of this body agree. But I do have a couple of questions for Representative Anderson, if she would yield.
She will yield. Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Anderson, you talked as you went through your review of the bill about Section 7 of the bill, which is what my amendment is moving to delete. And I'm wondering, you mentioned there are 7 staff members that this would apply to. Those members, staff members, are hired by the authority. I'm wondering, do members of the authority also give up their political rights as a condition of sitting on that board?
Member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Liebling. If they are considered an employee, they would be. As you look on Section 7 of the bill, and you're looking at line 29, it says, as a condition of employment, employees selected by the authority may not engage in partisan political activities. However, I think when you are looking at the commissioners themselves, they would not be considered employees of the MSFA.
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Anderson. Well, if she would continue to yield, Mr. Speaker.
She will yield. Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Anderson, could you, this is concerning to me, and I'll tell you why, and I want to ask you to explain why you're doing it in this way, because I could fully understand you're wanting to put that condition in, and just for members of the public who may be watching, the sentence that I'm concerned about is a sentence that says, as a condition of employment, employees selected by the authority may not engage in partisan political activities. And Representative Anderson, I could fully understand that if you hadn't done the other reforms in the bill. But you have reformed the authority, which I agree with you that it needed reform. And you've got different people selecting those members, so they're going to come, at least some of them, from different political parties by necessity, because they're being chosen, some of them by members of the legislature, by the governor, et cetera. And yet you're not doing anything about taking away the rights to engage in partisan political activity by the actual members of the authority. So I'm wondering why you're doing that. And also, since I don't want to have to ask you to keep yielding, if you could just explain I know that the authority hires a contractor to do a lot of management for the authority, for the stadium. I'm wondering why this language wouldn't apply to those employees as well. You know, whether, is this intended to apply only to those 7 staff members? And if so, why?
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Liebling, this does apply just to the 7 staff members that are part of it. I know in the committee, I think it was either Ways and Means, I can't remember what committee it was, you had expressed concern that this would apply to the contractors and vendors. And that is not my intent. That's not what this bill does. This is applying to those 7 employees. And I think what my impetus for doing this is the fact that this has been so egregious. We saw in November probably something Minnesotans weren't expecting. They weren't expecting that, number one, that there was 2 suites that were being used for whatever purpose. They weren't expecting 2 suites, and they certainly weren't expecting that those suites, by over 61%, were being used by friends and family of the board members. I don't think anybody anticipated that that's how these suites would have been used, whether it was 1 or 2. Then on top of it, when we had the Office of the Legislative Auditor come in and talk to us about what he found in his review, we discovered that there was a 3rd suite that the taxpayers of Minnesotans are paying for as part of this package. Nobody was expecting any of that. And as I have been going through this, I will tell you this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is more to come. And you saw that on Sunday when you saw the board chair using her position to jump and budge in front of season ticket holders in the state of Minnesota so that they could get a better seat than anybody else. In fact, not just a better seat, but the best seat in the house of the Viking Stadium. And I think that's what's really concerning to me, is that not only were they using these suite tickets, having friends and family for that, but then on top of it, they're taking an asset that will grow in value to benefit their own personal pocket. If you look at seat licenses in other states, I'm just going to use Pittsburgh as a prime example. In Pittsburgh, when they initially sold their seat licenses, they were about $1,000. Since that time, they've increased value to over $9,000. So we're not just talking about a one-time entertainment, a one-time game, a one-time, hey, this was kind of fun, or a concert, whatever it may be. You're talking about an actual benefit, an actual, if you will, stock, an asset. When I look at it, I say, this is kind of like Wall Street. You've got a situation here where she's got insider trading to her own personal benefit. So now she paid $7,000 for that seat, $14,000 when you include her husband, then friends and family on top of it. And the people that have been season ticket holders for 50 years got bumped. And I got an email this morning from one of those season ticket holders that says, you know, usually we've been on the second row, 50-yard line, we've had that for 50 years. And now they got bumped. Bumped for her, bumped for her friends, bumped for her associates. So I think that we're talking about a time in our history, unfortunately, that we need to take different measures to ensure this never happens again. So when you're talking about those 7 employees doing political activities, I don't care what party they're from, they shouldn't be doing it. They're not going to do it on the People's Stadium dime. They're not going to do it on the taxpayers' dime. And that's what this is about.
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Anderson, that was a great speech, and a lot of it I agree with you on. But you didn't really answer the question. So you're singling out 7 people who are staff members who are hired by the authority, who none of the things that you talked about were related to the staff having the right to engage in the political activity of their choice. And I think this is a problem. You know, we've seen the Republicans this session moving in a direction of squelching people's First Amendment rights. And I agree that we have a problem here. I didn't vote for the stadium bill. I don't think you did either. But you know, here it is. So we have to deal with it. And I think that we want to make sure that Minnesotans get the value they're supposed to get. And I don't care the political party or how a person got to their position if they're abusing their authority. And I'll work with anybody in any party to make sure that doesn't happen. However, I think this goes too far, because you haven't explained at all how allowing people who are staff, who are hired by an authority that now is going to be bipartisan for sure, why that staff is not going to be able to exercise their own political rights to be active. Now, you're not saying anything about they can't belong to a party, or you may have the most partisan people in the world here as staff. I don't know why they're not allowed to exercise their political rights, just like everybody else. And certainly if they can't, I don't know why you're allowing the manager of the stadium, who's also, you say it doesn't apply to that person. I don't know why you see that in the language here. I would think this language applies to all the employees of the stadium, and it should also apply to the commissioners themselves if you're going to do that to the staff. So, members, I think this is really a problem. I think that the Republican Party needs to start respecting people's First Amendment rights and their political rights. And there may be a place, Representative Anderson, to take this away and limit people's engagement. But I think with the bill as it is, completely changing the authority, I think it's completely unnecessary. And I hope that you're going to really take a look at this as this moves along, because I really think this is wrong. It goes too far. People should not have to give up their political rights to have a staff job. They really should not. You haven't shown any relationship between partisan political activity of staff members and the things that you're trying to stop from happening in this bill. So, members, I know how this is going to go, so I am not going to move forward with this at this time, but I hope that you'll really give some consideration to this, Representative Anderson, because that's very important for people to be able to exercise their political rights and have a job at the same time, and they shouldn't have to choose between those two things. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to withdraw this amendment.
Representative Liebling withdraws the A19 amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Nelson moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A21.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Nelson, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. And because of the A29 amendment, I'm going to pull this amendment and not offer it. Mr. Speaker, I want to pull the amendment.
Representative Nelson withdraws the A21 amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Liebling moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A25.
Recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this amendment does is simply clarify the language in the bill that says that the suites must be, I think it says sold. It says the authority must negotiate a return of all stadium suites to the primary tenant or other interested parties in return for fair market value. And I like that idea. I think that these suites should be earning money if they're set aside for public use. And what I really would like to do is see money earned from those suites go back to pay off the bonds, go back to the taxpayer. And that was my original intent in drafting this amendment. But the staff have told me that you really can't do that because it affects the bonds and the tax-exempt status of the bonds. And I'm sure that I think that's something that Representative Anderson has discovered too, because I think probably the best thing that we would really like to do is return the money to the taxpayer in the best possible way. But what I've done here with the amendment, I was concerned about the language in return for fair market value, that isn't really specific enough. And I wanted to just simply make sure, because I think that these are going to go back to the Vikings. The staff has told me that really under the authority agreement, apparently, there is no other interested party that's going to be able to buy them. So I just wanted to make sure that the revenue that is received in exchange for these suites is at least equal to the fair market rate for the other stadium suites of similar size and location. So it's just a little bit belt and suspenders, and I'm interested. Unfortunately, I didn't have an opportunity to talk to Representative Anderson about this. It's certainly not intended to undermine anything that is being done in the bill, but just simply to clarify it a little bit. And so I'll be interested to hear what Representative Anderson has to say in response.
Discussion on the 825 amendment. The member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson S.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Liebling, and I'm checking with staff on this language because you had brought this up in the Ways and Means Committee. You're fighting over the same words. This is actual, how I've got it drafted in the bill is fair market value. And so you're not changing anything with this amendment, so I'd ask folks to vote no.
Representative Liebling.
Well, thank you, Representative Anderson. I guess you know, it's interesting because really what the bill is about is we don't want to trust anybody. We want to make sure that things that have gone wrong in the past because there wasn't proper oversight are made better by the bill, and I think it does that in a lot of places. But this just leaves to the Stadium Authority kind of an open question about what is fair market value, instead of you know, saying how you're going to determine fair market value. That's really all the difference is here. So, members, I hope that you can support this. It doesn't change the bill. It just makes it a little more specific. Like I said, makes kind of belt and suspenders, and make sure that we get what we get back from these suites when they're sold, which is probably going to be to the Vikings, that it's at least what the Vikings are getting for their suites that are similar in size and location. So please vote yes.
Further discussion on the 825 amendment. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the 825 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move the A19 amendment, and I request a roll call, please.
Representative Anderson moves the A19 amendment. Roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. The clerk will report the A19 amendment.
Liebling moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A19. Yes. Anderson S. is moving to amend House File 778. The amendment is coded A19.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson S., to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the amendment that Representative Liebling just presented moments ago, talking about partisan political activities conducted by the 7 MSFA staff. And you had said that I didn't answer your question. And I think the answer to your question is this, Representative Liebling. We have had a situation where friends and family of a political persuasion, it wasn't based on just this was the neighbor down the street. This was based on people that had a political connection, that were using their position, and the staff said nothing about it, and this corrects that. So this language is in place to make sure that those folks are not engaging in partisan political activities because it benefits their boss. And this does, the language that I have in the bill applies to the executive director. That is an employee. It does not apply to the commissioners. They're not employees. But this language that I've got in the bill that you want to amend and take out is the reason why we're here today. Because these folks were participating in activities that the average Joe citizen never anticipated. And so I'm going to make sure that this never happens again. And I don't care who's in control. I don't care who's governor and whose friends that they have appointed as commissioners or whatever. I want to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. And this is something that we do on the state level. We ask our campaign finance board to not engage in political activities. We ask our nonpartisan staff here to not engage in political activities. Even the federal government asks folks to not engage in political activities. It's called the Hatch Act. And we do that to uphold the integrity of our government so that the people of Minnesota know somebody else is not getting a spiff that everybody else doesn't get. So with that, members, I ask you to vote red on the A19 amendment.
Further discussion on the A19 amendment. The member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Well, Representative Anderson, it still makes no sense because you're not stopping anybody. All you said in justification for this is that the staff didn't act as whistleblowers. But by stopping people from engaging in partisan political activities, you're not stopping them from being partisans. You're not stopping them from covering the tail of some board member who's acting badly. You're not giving them extra protection to be a whistleblower. All you're doing is saying that they can't be overt about their exercising their political rights. I think that's ridiculous. But you know, I do understand that this is a gotcha amendment for you. I know it's a gotcha because then you can go out and write a postcard against some of our members and say, oh, look, they want people to be partisans and they want to continue the bad acting at the stadium. And so I'm going to ask members to vote no, just vote no, and just know that Representative Anderson is just trying to make this really, wants to write that postcard, I suppose, or somebody does maybe. And we won't give him the opportunity, but I just hope, Representative Anderson, that when you take this to conference, if you do, that you can really give this some thought because really, there are certain areas where we do tell people not to engage in political activity because they're supposed to be nonpartisan. But that isn't usually just staff who are working on some, those people are working in the political realm, and there's a particularly important reason we do that to them. We don't just take it away willy-nilly, and I think it's really wrong to do it in this case. But members, please vote no.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Thiessen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Anderson yield for question?
She will yield. Representative Thiessen.
Thank you. And I really don't know the answer to this. So do state employees and city government employees, can they engage in partisan activities in Minnesota?
The member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Thiessen, it depends upon where they are funded. So if they get a portion of funds from the federal government, yes, they would be limited in what their political activities are. But that all depends upon what level of federal funding that they're receiving.
Representative Thiessen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, so the Hatch Act would apply to federal employees and I guess to federally employees that are federal. Okay, that makes sense. But for state employees and for employees that work for our counties, employees that work for our cities, unless they're funded 100% or by a federal grant to that city that pays for that job, they can go out and say put up a lawn sign as an example. They can go out and door knock if they want to. They can go to a political meeting, a Republican, a Democrat, an Independence Party meeting. And so I guess I'm not seeing what the distinction is, unless maybe the direction that we're going to be going in this state is to say that no employee of a city or a county, a school district, so no teacher in the future could engage in political activities. If that's the direction we're going, maybe that's a debate we ought to have. I would also note under the Hatch Act, those employees are all protected from being fired for partisan reasons at all, and I don't, see that as part of this. I think this is a really, really, really dangerous direction for us to go. I think Representative Liebling is right. It doesn't solve the problem that Representative Anderson is trying to solve, which is a very real problem. But it's a very dangerous direction for us to go, to start taking away ordinary citizens' First Amendment rights, which is exactly what Representative Liebling's amendment is trying to solve. And so I will be voting in favor of the amendment.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Thiessen, Representative Liebling. First off, as I mentioned earlier, this is a request that we make of our campaign finance board. This is a request that we make of our nonpartisan staff that we have here, both in the revisor's office, in the House Research Department. This is not something that is extraordinary. This is something that we do on a regular basis in order to maintain the integrity of our system. And what you saw over the last several months is people of a political persuasion abusing their position to benefit their personal pocketbook. And we're saying to the citizens of Minnesota, that ends today. No more of this happens. Now, Representative Liebling, you had said that this was a gotcha amendment. I don't know how it can be a gotcha amendment when I didn't even draft the amendment. You did. This was an amendment you fully anticipated voting on today on this House floor. So unless I'm missing something, I don't know, if you're switching sides, we'll welcome you. This is not a gotcha. This is about having integrity in our system and saying to the people of Minnesota that this kind of abuse stops today. It's done. It's over. Please vote no on this amendment.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Anderson, it became a gotcha when you brought it back and asked for a roll call on it. That's what makes it a gotcha. I wasn't actually intending to get a vote on it. As you saw, I didn't ask for one because I know it puts members in a difficult position, but I brought it up because I wanted to bring attention to what you're doing in this bill and that it's unnecessary to deprive people of their political rights. That's why I brought the amendment, so that we could have a little bit of a discussion about this as we're having today, because this bill, it's good to reform the authority, but you know, one person's really bad judgment, and perhaps even more than that, is not linked to necessarily to their political views. This is something that we need to make sure. For example, another member of this body also exercised what may be illegal behavior in doing something similar. So this is not something that is about party, Representative Anderson. This is about integrity, a person's own integrity, whether they exercise good judgment or bad. And when someone who's hired in a position of responsibility exercises really bad judgment, they shouldn't keep that. They shouldn't keep that position. We do not want people working for the people of Minnesota who don't understand the difference between serving the people and serving themselves. That is clear. And I don't think there's a member on this floor that doesn't understand the difference and know that this should not have happened in this case. But that doesn't mean that a person who's simply working as a staff member should be told that they're not allowed to go out and put up a sign for a political candidate, or that they can't knock on doors for a political candidate or make phone calls or whatever it is they want to do. I don't see what that has to do with bad behavior with the stadium authority. So I think that members can, you know, just because this is a gotcha, because we shouldn't be having a roll call on it if it wasn't a gotcha. That's what makes it a gotcha. You made it a gotcha, Representative Anderson. And so members, I think you can feel comfortable voting no if you wish to do that. Thank you.
The member from Nicollet, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm one member who needs to know a little bit more. So, would Representative Anderson stand for a question?
She will yield. Representative Johnson.
Representative Anderson, you suggest that this is somewhat common, and I see the wisdom in the Campaign Finance Board and the House nonpartisan staff being restricted in political activity. Are there other state employees that face a similar restriction?
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Johnson, as I mentioned earlier, if you are a state employee that also receives a certain percentage of federal funds to fund your position, yes, you would not be allowed to participate in political activities.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the representative yield for another question?
She will yield. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess my question, I recognize that. That's the application of the Hatch Act, and that I think I understand. But what about state employees who are not receiving federal money to finance their position? Are there others outside the CFB and the House nonpartisan staff who would have this similar political restriction?
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Johnson, as I outlined, you've got the nonpartisan staff that we have here in the House and the Senate. So the Revisor's Office, you've got the House Research Department, you've got the Campaign Finance Board, you've got any state employee that receives a large portion of their position is funded with federal funds. All of those folks are impacted by not being able to participate in political activities. Beyond that, I would have to do even more research to find out for you any other entities, but I encourage you to also reach out to research staff to find that out as well.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And would the Representative Anderson respond to one more question?
She will yield. Representative Johnson.
I guess my question, my doubt, and I'm just trying to follow the debate this afternoon, is that, you know, I see the Campaign Finance Board, that deals with financing of elections. It's directly, it's right in the thick of the partisan, natural partisan work of who we are as state representatives, the financing, the lobbyists, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that one. I certainly understand the House nonpartisan staff and the Revisor's Office, and I think, I hope Minnesota knows they are wonderfully nonpartisan, and I can see where that provision helps them remain nonpartisan. I get that. But I don't see the similarity between the employees for the Stadium Authority and those two organizations. Do they have, am I missing something? Is there some sort of political work that they are expected to do in service to the legislature, or political work in service to monitoring campaign financing, or service to the public in making sure that their work is clearly nonpartisan? Could you explain that for me?
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Johnson, we're asking the Stadium Authority staff to not participate in political activities, and these folks are in charge of probably one of the largest public investments that we have here in the state. And what we saw over the course of the last 2 years, commissioners that were told that they couldn't get the information that they were requesting. We had folks that were using their position to benefit their party friends and family, and using that for stadium suites, and using that for getting seat licenses that nobody else got access to. Yeah, you bet. There's a real reason why we don't want these staff participating in political activities, because clearly how we've had it now is not stopping abusive behavior. And we want to make sure that there is great oversight, and that when we have this new board put in place, that it doesn't matter who the commissioner is or who appointed that commissioner, they'll be able to get the information that they need to provide the oversight that we need of this board, to make sure that those funds are not being abused, that there isn't another 4 suites existing somewhere in the closet that we haven't heard of, that there aren't seat licenses that are being cherry-picked for individuals that aren't even part of the season ticket holders package. I can go on. I mean, we've got all the examples that you need of clearly there was gross negligence on the management of this board, and we're tightening things down to make sure it never happens again.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, a lot of thought. Representative Anderson, we haven't spoken about this bill, but I might be one of your strongest supporters on this bill. Right away, I think you're right on and really taking on what the abuse was, but the abuse was at the board level. You talk about this being one of Minnesota's major investments. Well, I think Minnesota has a larger investment in our roads and bridges, and are we to then suggest that we can't trust MnDOT employees to be involved in political activity? I don't like the term slippery slope, but this feels like that, and so it gives me great pause. This amendment, maintaining that position, and so I think we need to take that into consideration today. The right to participate politically is so fundamental to being an American and being a Minnesotan. And I think we need to be real careful as we take that away. And these are, 7 employees they're the staff. And the promise of the board, this bill is effectively dealing with that board. My compliments, my sincere compliments. Thank you for doing that. But boy, I tell you, I have trouble taking away political rights from folks. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Carlson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, Representative Anderson yield to a question.
She will yield. Representative Carlson.
Representative Anderson, I'm trying to get a feel for the reach here of the language that you have in the bill. When I read the sentence prior to the new language, it says the authority may employ persons and contract for services necessary to carry out its functions, including the utilization of employees and consultants retained by other governmental entities. And then we go on with the new language to say, and as a condition of employment, employees selected by. So I know in the debate there's been reference several times to several people, namely 7. But it looks like that language might be broader when you read the entire paragraph in terms of their ability to employ others. And I've never been to the new stadium, but I was at the old stadium and I observed there's a number of employees, and I don't know who the employer is. There are people that take tickets. There are people that supervise a variety of activities. I know things like concessions are under contract, so they wouldn't be public employees. But I'm not sure about many of the other people that we would typically see at the stadium, people that are the ushers, the people who sell the tickets, the people who collect the tickets. So I just want to have some comfort level from you that we're really talking about 7 employees and not a broader complement of employees, being that they have that authority. So if you could clarify that.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Carlson, this only applies to the 7 employees.
Representative Carlson.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Representative Anderson, when you look at the first paragraph, though, it says that the authority may employ persons. They reference contracts, but let's just look at the authority may employ persons. And then it goes on to say, including employees and consultants from other governmental entities. So that sounds to me like there may be more than just the 7. And I don't know enough about the overall complement for the stadium or who the boss is, if you will, for all those other employees. I know some, the restaurant and the concessions are employed by, I think the Vikings have the authority or the oversight or the ability to sell the food and beverages as part of the concessions. But I'm not sure but what it may be going beyond the 7. That's what I want to have clarified. If the bill moves forward, and I think it will, I think that there has to be some clarification there that you're only talking then about the 7 and the reach isn't greater than what the language would imply when you read the whole paragraph.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Carlson, this language only applies to the 7 employees. We do not have the authority to go and say to the contractors that they cannot participate in this. The language, I've been assured by staff, applies to those 7 employees only.
Representative Carlson.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Anderson, that's not what that first sentence says. It talks about both employing people and contracting. So if you eliminate the contracting, they still have the authority to employ persons necessary to carry out the functions and what have you of the stadium, including employees of other governmental entities. That's what it says. There's nothing in the paragraph that really specifically refers to those 7 employees. That may be an interpretation that you have, but I think there needs to be clarification as this bill moves forward that you're talking about people who perhaps report directly, but being that they can employ other persons, which is what the language says, I'm only concerned that the reach may be going beyond what you think it does.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Carlson, if you look at the language on page 3, line 26, it says the authority may employ persons and contract for services. So there's a clear distinction between employing people and contracting for services. Because then when you get to line 28, it says as a condition of employment. So there's a clear distinction between the actual contract people and the actual employees, which is the 7 employees. But having heard your concerns, I will certainly look at this language for the future to give you greater comfort to make sure that it only applies to the 7. But as I've been told by staff, this only applies to the 7 employees.
Representative Carlson.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Anderson, that's all I was after, was that as the bill moves forward, there be some clarification there, because I am reading the language differently than you are. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And would Representative Anderson stand for a question?
She will yield. Representative Nelson.
Representative Anderson, having worked in a previous job that was covered by the Hatch Act, my question for you is, the way this language in the bill goes, it goes beyond what the Hatch Act does for federal employees. Currently, federal employees that are covered by the Hatch Act, they can be involved in some partisan politics up to running for office. They can't run for a partisan office. They can run for a nonpartisan office. They can go to their precinct caucuses at a specific party. They can be involved in party politics at the individual local level. They can put lawn signs up in their yard if they choose, but they cannot run for partisan political office. And I know that because the previous job that I had, when I took my job as a business agent, I was on a leave without pay, but before I could run for this position that I'm in now, I had to resign my position because I couldn't run for office at the time. So what you're doing here is making these people, taking away their even being able to go to their precinct caucuses. You're taking away their right to have a lawn sign in their yard. You're taking away any of that stuff. So you're going well beyond what the Hatch Act does for federal employees. And as was pointed out earlier, part of the Hatch Act, the reason it was passed was so that when the Democrats took over from the Republicans, all the Republican people that worked in federal offices would get fired. It used to happen. And when the Republicans took over for the Democrats, it went the other way. All the Democrats that were in office got fired. This is partly that was put into effect was to protect those employees that are doing the good business for the state and for the federal government, to be able to be secure in their jobs so they can do their jobs and not have to worry about going to the whims of the federal government. So Representative Anderson, is that your intent, is to take away, again, hamstring this and take away these people's First Amendment rights?
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Nelson, on the Hatch Act, there's different versions of the Hatch Act and who it applies to. So in some cases, it does ban individuals from participating in partisan political activities, for all the items that you listed. For example, these federal employees may not be candidates for public office in partisan elections, campaign for or against a candidate or slate of candidates in partisan elections, make campaign speeches, collect contributions or sell tickets to political fundraising functions, distribute campaign material in partisan elections, organize or manage political rallies or meetings, hold office in political clubs or parties, circulate nominating positions, work to register voters for one party only, and wear political buttons at work. So that's just one segment that the Hatch Act covers for individuals that is currently what we have in law. And so this is no different than what we have on the federal law. It's not beyond that. It's what currently exists.
Any further discussion to the A19 amendment? A roll call being requested. The clerk will take the roll on the A19 amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 22 ayes and 104 nays, the A19 amendment is not adopted. There's another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Freiberg moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A26.
I call upon the author of the amendment to introduce the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a good government amendment. I spoke to Representative Anderson about this on Friday. I believe with the A22 amendment we discussed earlier, we took a step in the right direction. If you recall, that amendment required the legislative auditor to review the operations of our other publicly financed professional sports stadiums to determine if anything needed to be done. We do, in fact, already have a recommendation from the OLA. In the OLA report, recommendation 4 says that the legislature should consider enactment of laws to control the use of complimentary tickets at all sports and entertainment facilities built with public money. It goes on to mention that Target Field is an example of a stadium that still has practices of the sort we're discussing with this bill. So this amendment just simply says that any of the provisions in the bill that limit access to suites also have to apply to publicly funded arenas and stadiums for professional baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, as well as the University of Minnesota football stadium. So I would encourage members to support this common sense, good government amendment.
Member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Freiberg, I do appreciate you coming to give me a heads up on this amendment and what you're looking to do. In the conversation that we had in my office, I had asked if you had had an opportunity to talk to the other entities at all that have stadiums here in the state of Minnesota that were publicly financed. Can you tell me what you found out from them?
Representative Freiberg.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Freiberg yield?
He will yield. Representative Freiberg.
Representative Freiberg, on Friday when you came into my office, I do appreciate you coming into my office, giving me a heads up on this amendment. As you saw earlier, I've got language to address this with the Office of the Legislative Auditor doing an overall review. I think that will be helpful for us as a legislative body. But one of the things that I had asked you in my office was if you had had an opportunity to talk to the other entities that have publicly financed stadiums here in the state of Minnesota to find out what they do. So can you tell me what your conversation was with them?
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. I did not speak to them directly. However, I did skim the entire OLA report here. I mentioned recommendation number 4 as well as the information there about Target Field, which still does provide access to its suites. I got some additional information. So Target Field, as I already mentioned, may give friends and family access to suites. The U, from what I have heard, may offer free access. The person that I spoke to has not seen that policy in writing, however. Target Center and the Convention Center require friends and family to pay. The person I spoke to was not certain about XL Energy Center. I do believe that beyond that, however, this is a common sense, good government policy, so regardless of whatever their policy is, if we feel that the limitations that you put in Section 9 of the bill are good enough for U.S. Bank, then it should be good for our other publicly financed professional sports stadiums as well.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Freiberg, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, and I look forward to working with you on this issue further, because I do think that we need to do an overall review of all of our publicly financed stadiums and figure out what's the best approach. As I've said many times, I view this legislation as kind of a model or as a guide for us in reviewing all of these other stadiums that we have here in the state of Minnesota. But I've had the opportunity, when this story first broke out in November, when it was revealed that the U.S. Bank Stadium MSFA Board Authority had been using their suites to benefit friends and family, I went out and sought the input from the other stadiums. How is it managed in the other stadiums here in the state of Minnesota? I also looked on a national perspective too, to kind of get a flavor of what's happening on the national level. And what I found is that no two stadiums are alike here in the state of Minnesota. All of them operate very differently. And let me just give you an example. So the Excel, where the Wild play, they actually don't have the city of St. Paul doesn't get engaged at all in it. Instead, it's the Wild, because they paid a greater portion of the financing of the facility, that they're responsible for the management of the Excel Stadium for the Wild. And they did that for a couple reasons. The city of St. Paul did not want to have the liability of maintaining the facility to the standards that it needs to be made. And so the city of St. Paul said, we do not want to have any investment in that. What they do have is they have public oversight that's performed through a lease representative that is designated by the city. So in their situation, they're vastly different than what you would have from the U.S. Bank Stadium. And so this language that we have in this bill actually wouldn't apply. And so it just doesn't fit with that stadium in particular. And so that's where we can't necessarily do this as this is the one size fits all for each of these stadiums. We actually need to look at each one of these stadiums and figure out a plan of making sure that there's proper oversight for each one of these. And so I look forward to working with you on that. I've just been appointed to the Commission on Sports Facilities, and hopefully you can participate in that process, because I do think that we need to look at all of these as a whole. When you also look at the Target Center, this is where the Minnesota Timberwolves play, they actually contract out with AEG, and the city mayor of Minneapolis said that no suites or seats for the city officials or staff are made available. They are just like the public. They have to purchase a ticket like anybody else at the market rate value of that ticket, just like anybody else. So another example of a stadium that handles it vastly different. If we were to put this piece of legislation in place, it wouldn't really fit. But I do think that there is a role for us to take a look and see what is the proper fit for each one of these different stadiums. But I appreciate you bringing forward the amendment.
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that response, Representative Anderson. I guess I just keep coming back to the recommendation number 4 from the legislative auditor, and it says the legislature should consider enactment of laws to control the use of complimentary tickets at all sports and entertainment facilities built with public money. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask for a roll call vote.
A roll call being requested, and seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. The member from Ramsey, Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Representative Anderson just made a number of the points that I was going to make about the Xcel Energy Center operating structure, which is in fact quite different. There's no public body or public official that receives a free suite or free tickets. And my concern about this amendment, I think you're just saying the provisions of this bill as it relates to limiting access to suites apply to all of those, or would any of these other components, like the issue we just debated, would you yield please to clarify how broad this is? For example, we just talked about 7 employees at the Viking Stadium having that the language about the what was it, campaign activities, I think. So what does this mean if suddenly we're now applying some of the same issues around the bill? Are we now, even though we don't give away any free suites, we suddenly are limiting employees?
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you look at the text of the amendment, it says provisions, and thank you, Representative Hausman, for the question. It's a good one. It says provisions limiting access to suites under Section 473J.09 subdivision 15 apply to basically to other stadiums. Then if you look at the text of the bill, starting on line 4.10, That adds subdivision 15, which is entirely new language. It relates only to the use of stadium suites. It just contains provisions such as stadium suites may not be used by board members. Stadium suite use must be limited to only those persons in activities with a legitimate business purpose, and so forth. So just to answer your question, yes, it only applies to the use of suites.
Any further discussion to the A26 amendment? Roll. Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the body as a whole before we vote on this. I think most of you know I've been a pretty big champion of the XL, and if anyone should have been invited to a free suite, it might have been me. And unfortunately, I either am too dense to take the hint, or the X is just really, really honest, and they've never invited me to a free suite. So I'm not sure why we're including hockey in this particular amendment. And as in St. Paul, we're getting a soccer stadium privately funded. So I'm not sure why we're keeping soccer in here, but I'll just leave it at that.
Any further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk will take the roll on the A26 amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 51 ayes and 76 nays, the A26 amendment is not adopted. There's another amendment at the desk.
Lesh moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A30.
Call upon the member from Ramsey, Representative Lesh, to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Are we going to do the amendment to the amendment?
Clerk will record the amendment to the amendment.
Anderson S. moves to amend the Lesh amendment, the House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment to the amendment is coded A31.
I call upon the author of the amendment to the amendment, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Lesh, you have talked about this issue quite a few times. So what I did is I tried to incorporate your provision, but I had to fix some of your provision because as your amendment is drafted, it would provide a loophole to lobbyists to actually provide this as long as they said that it wasn't with the intent of giving this preferential treatment to a lawmaker or public official. And that is a pretty big loophole. And so with my amendment to your amendment, it tries to fix that and narrow it so that that doesn't happen. And I ask for your support.
Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to believe that your intent in this amendment to the amendment was to fix a loophole, Representative Anderson, but it's big enough to drive the Vikings bus through now. What you did was you said that instead of prohibiting politicians from taking free gifts from the Vikings or the MSFA or whomever else, you're gonna say they can take them as long as they report it. Is that, Mr. Speaker, would Representative Anderson yield to the question?
She will yield. Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Am I wrong in characterizing it that way, Representative Anderson?
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Lash. If you look at your amendment, lines 1.4 through 1.7, that language is kept in place. And in that language, it reads, a lobbyist or principal may not give a gift or request another to give a gift to an official. An official may not accept a gift from a lobbyist or a principal. That maintains in place. What your amendment does, however, is it allows for a lobbyist to potentially give this as a gift to a lawmaker or other public official by just ignoring that provision. So I'm trying to fix your amendment to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you.
Representative Lesh.
Well, Mr. Speaker and Representative Anderson, if that was your intent, you could have written your amendment to your amendment that way. But instead, what you did is you said, all these politicians, these, in fact, how you characterize it in your press release, misuse taxpayer-subsidized suites to wine and dine friends, family members, or well-connected politicians. That I presume was what you're trying to prevent, because that's what your press release said, dated February 7th. But when I offered language to prohibit that kind of thing in this, you offered an amendment to the amendment that said, no, you can do that. Actually, you can wine and dine well-connected politicians as long as those well-connected politicians just report it. That's what your amendment says. So I can't figure out why that's a fix. It looks to me like your amendment to the amendment is doing the exact opposite of what this press release from February 7th said. So I'm a little confused. But, you know, I take you at your word, Representative Anderson, that you don't want this kind of thing with MSFA to ever happen again. And I think you have a lot of agreement on this side of the aisle. You never want this to happen again. And I believe it because you said that now. I counted 7 times. I was marking it off as you said that 7 times. Now, I didn't start marking it off until a few minutes into the debate. And then I went down to the bathroom, came back up. So I might have missed one, I don't know. But I counted 7. I got it at 348, 355, 405, 412, and 419 that you said that. Never happen again. And there was great lamentation and indignation about people getting favors. And I take you at your word on that. And your concern, as you said, that you didn't want people to jump the line or budge in line, well-heeled officials to budge in line in this. And so I'm trying to figure out people, in your words, who have a political connection using their position for an advantage. How is it that that is precluded when you allow for it, but just have them report that advantage to the Campaign Finance Board? So this amendment to the amendment looks to me, Representative Anderson, like a pro-preferential treatment amendment to the amendment. It says I can still get into these suites as an elected official as long as it's reported. And I don't think that's what the people want. I think they want this precluded. And you're doing that specifically with respect to MSFA officials, but all the rest of us, you're going to allow to keep on getting wined and dined and go into these suites that other people don't have access to, which was the subject of a Campaign Finance Board ruling in 1999, as I pointed out when we talked about this in the rules debate. And I fear, Representative Anderson, that you've taken what could have been a simple good government bill and made it bare nakedly partisan. I'd like to believe that you sincerely want this to happen, but I have some questions about that because your caucus has unclean hands on this, one of your own. is involved in this, and you're protecting that person. Mr. Speaker, this might be a good time, if someone wants to, for someone to rise to a point of order under Mason Section 124 on questioning the motives of a member. Any takers? Anyone? Bueller? Okay, Mr. Speaker, I rise to a point of order under Mason Section 124 because Representative Lesh is questioning the motives of a member. Advice, Mr. Speaker.
Offer your advice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm directly questioning the motives of Representative Anderson because she's offered a bill that could have been a good government bill, but has made it bare nakedly partisan in attacking specifically certain people who she claimed was well-connected Democrat politicians and staff, and has rejected the amendments of Representative Freiberg and other amendments that it would have made it a good government bill. And the other part of my advice to you, Mr. Speaker, on this is that I'm not questioning the motives of a member. I'm telling the motives of a member that they are bare nakedly partisan. That's my advice.
Advice, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Anderson, state your advice.
Representative Lesh, you know, you listen better to me than my husband does. I'm very impressed, marking down the times. But like my husband, I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. You have blown it when it comes to reading this amendment to your amendment. Because in my amendment, it upholds that, like we currently have in law, we cannot accept a gift from lobbyists. That's current law. And my amendment enforces that. And on top of it, it increases transparency because it says if you're going to go to this event, you have to disclose that you're going to this event. Your amendment doesn't do that, Representative Lesh. In fact, what your amendment does, if you look at page 1, line 9 of your amendment, it says if the purpose for giving the gift is to the recipient's status as an official, then okay, yeah, that's fine. You can't do that. But if it's not given, if they claim, we're going to give it up to the Campaign Finance Board that they have to interpret that if they claim that they just gave this to you because they like you, they think you're a good person, then that's okay. You're actually opening up the books to allow lobbyists and principals to give this a gift to public officials. You, in fact, reverse what we have currently in law. And I was just trying to help you out, Representative Lesh. Tighten your language, increase the transparency, and put this in place. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm going far afield. I'm surprised somebody hasn't risen to a point of order because this is not truly advice. But I do have a point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, can a individual raise a point of order on themselves?
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw my point of order.
Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose do you rise?
I ask for a call of the House and request a roll call on the bill. On the amendment.
Showing 10 hands, there is. Seeing 10 hands, the clerk will take the roll. Clerk will close the roll.
Mr. Speaker,
All members are here. Clerk will close the roll. Member from Hennepin, Representative Applebaum, for what purpose do you rise?
thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for a roll call on the amendment.
Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call on the amendment. Any further discussion? Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I believe you, Representative Anderson, when you tell your husband a lot that he's wrong. But I would just point out that Jedi mind tricks only work on the weak-minded. And I would also say that your powers of obfuscation, Representative Anderson, don't play out at your suggestion that you're trying to help the amendment by making sure folks like us don't benefit from well-heeled campaign contributors. It does just the opposite. So, members, I'd ask for a red vote on Representative Anderson's amendment to the amendment.
Representative Anderson, S.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Lesh, first of all, I ask for your green vote on this. If you look at Representative Lesh's amendment, what he would say is that as long as the lobbyist or the principal says, oh, well, I didn't give this to them because they're a public official, really, I didn't, then they're off scot-free. You're opening up a larger door to having lobbyists wine and dine public officials. Now, I'm trying to help you out here, Representative Lesh. I'm sure your wife has to do that quite a bit. I say that in good fun. You know I love you. But when you look at my amendment to the amendment, what it says is that you cannot, just like current law is, accept a gift from a lobbyist or a lobbyist principal. And instead what it says, if you're going to get it from somebody else, a private association, you have to disclose that. Currently, we don't have to. This strengthens the transparency in Minnesota. I thought it was getting to the issue, Representative Lesh, of what you wanted to get at. And this is greater transparency for all of us as public officials, and I'm surprised that you would vote no.
Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Anderson, my wife's up in the gallery, and she's on my side for this one, just so you know. But Representative Anderson, if you really wanted to, I put her in a bad position, right? Okay, so, you know, she still wants a hearing on her bills, chairs. I don't know what they are, but she wants, sorry about that. So you could have just amended it to reflect that, Representative Anderson, but you didn't do that. If in fact that was your concern, that everyone in every circumstance, no matter if you were childhood friends with someone who happened to be a lobbyist principal who had a suite, and you still didn't want to be able to go in there because they were giving you a free ticket, you could have amended it to say that, but you didn't. You said this is permitted with disclosure, which is why you took what you thought was a loophole and made it a whole lot bigger. Members, I ask for a red vote.
Further discussion to the A31 amendment to the amendment. Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll call on the amendment to the amendment. Members, please vote. The House is under call. All members having voted, the clerk will close the roll. There being 75 ayes and 53 nays, the amendment to the amendment is adopted.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw my amendment.
Representative Lesch withdraws his amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Loeffler moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded RA 17-002.
I call upon the author of the amendment from Hennepin, Representative Loeffler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Well, many of you were here in 2012 when we passed the Viking Stadium bill. Others of you are new. But there was much talk about the People's Stadium. In fact, Representative Anderson made mention of that in her opening remarks. And for some people, the People's Stadium was a reference to the fact that the people were going to be paying for it through seat licenses, sales tax, e-pull tab gambling, and a lot of other ways. And for other people, the view of the People's Stadium was it was going to be a lively new addition to the entertainment and recreation offerings of our state, and that year-round, people from throughout Minnesota would be going into it to enjoy a variety of experiences. It was a really controversial bill, and we all had constituents who were both supportive and opposed. But I found one area of common ground amongst both of those groups. And that was the chance for ordinary Minnesotans, the people of Minnesota, to win a set of tickets to attend an event at the stadium they are paying for. They're going to be paying, the ordinary people of Minnesota are obligated to pay for this until the year 2046, almost 30 years from now. And people were really excited about the concept that they could buy a raffle ticket, even if they couldn't afford expensive tickets, and sit in those shiny new seats and have a really wonderful experience. For many of them, it would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity given their household budgets. The Minnesota Sports Facility Authority leadership was directed in law to study this, but they cavalierly dismissed the idea of holding a seat raffle at their October 12, 2012 meeting, just a few months after we passed it into law. They said there'd be practical issues to research, and MSFA Executive Director Ted Mondale said, "I think we have enough on our hands. I think we'll be busy enough without this." Well, maybe that comment was our first clue that this management team was not as focused on the public as we expected them to be. This amendment clarifies the provisions passed in 2012, where both stadium supporters and opponents agreed that this was something that we should make available to the people. It would apply to the use of the seats in the suites contracted for by the MSFA when they're not needed for stadium marketing purposes. I think we need to return to the ideals of that law we passed in 2012, giving the people of Minnesota the chance via raffle to have a unique experience and win tickets to the People's Stadium. We can turn the public consternation about the controversial suites into a win for ordinary taxpayers who are paying for this stadium. I know many would be thrilled to have a chance to win a pair of seats and would be welcoming this opportunity for us. Mr. Speaker, I request a roll call vote.
A roll call having been requested, seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Loeffler, I appreciate you bringing this language forward. However, what I'm looking to do is to take the revenue from these suites and to pay down the debt, and that's something that benefits all Minnesotans. So I would suggest a red vote on this.
Representative Loeffler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative, thank you for pointing out something I should have explained about the amendment. The amendment and the original law from 2012 says that the revenues from this should go to the debt on the stadium. So we both have the same goal. The difference is the underlying bill as proposed in front of us would take those seats and give them to the Vikings to market and make money on. This amendment, which honors the original deal of 2012, would say there'd be a raffle and that ordinary Minnesotans could sit in those seats. The chair of the Gambling Control Board in 2012 said he expected this to be a really big moneymaker. It hasn't been proven. We'll see. But it encourages them to work with the Minnesota Lottery, who have the infrastructure to construct something like this and make it happen.
Representative Anderson, S.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Loeffler, in the bill, actually, it allows it to be marketed to either potentially the current tenants of the Viking Stadium or any other interested parties. The goal then is to get the fair market value for the suites, which is anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000 for the value of each of those suites. And so when I look at your legislation, though, I think it's admirable. I don't think it'll generate us the same level of funding as my existing language, and that's why I oppose your amendment.
Member from Blue Earth, Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really like this bill. It gives a chance for people that normally can't get into the stadium a chance to actually be there in the People's Stadium. The other thing is that the revenue would be ongoing. So I'm going to vote for this one. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call being requested, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The House is under call. Members, please vote. Clerk will close the roll. There being 49 ayes and 79 noes, the amendment is not adopted. Member from Hennepin, Representative Applebaum, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask to lift the call of the House.
All those in favor of the Applebaum motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. Motion does not prevail.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the call of the House be lifted.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? No. Motion prevails. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Nelson moves to amend House File Number 778, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded DE5.
I call upon the member from Hennepin to report his amendment. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. The DE5 amendment is the amendment that implements the specific recommendations from our legislative auditor, who we all speak highly of at all times. And the amendment goes one step further, which includes an amendment that Representative Anderson put on, which has him look at the structure of the Stadium Commission and adjust it and maybe come back with recommendations to us. Most of us, if not all of us, agree that what happened with the stadium and the things that happened there kind of bother us all. And we're trying to respond to that, but I think we're going too far and we're going a little too fast. Representative Anderson's amendment to have the legislative order look at the structure is we're going to change the structure and then we're going to look at it. My amendment here basically says, okay, we're going to leave it in place, we're going to change the policy, we're going to implement the specific recommendations that the legislative auditor had, and then we're going to have him look at the structure and then come back to us and say, this is what we should do and this is how we should be running this. But we're doing this, we're putting the cart before the horse. Representative Anderson's bill blows up the structure, changes it all, puts a new structure in place without any recommendations of how to do this. This is one person's idea of how to do this. And we're just going to go down here. What the DE amendment does is in section 1, it expands the purpose of the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority to oversee the authority's use of all the suites, the cabin suites, the parking, the food service, and all other public amenities. And that was these are all recommendations from the legislative auditor. Section 2 requires the authority to review the reports required in his bill during a public meeting of the authority, when this is going to give greater transparency. Section 3 prohibits preferential access by the authority members and staff and other public officials to amenities at all the stadiums we have. Section 4 expands the authority's membership, adding 4 appointees of the legislature to improve legislative oversight of the authority. Section 5 of the amendment expands the authority's reporting requirements, requiring quarterly reports as opposed to annual reports, requiring reporting on revenues and expenditures, events conducted, and unexpected maintenance and capital repairs. Section 6 authorizes the authority to donate its access to stadium amenities, these suites, to nonprofit organizations. And again, Section 7 goes one step beyond what the legislative order has him look at the authority, has them look at the structure, has them look at the structure of the other stadiums we have and other stadiums around the country, and come back to us with a recommendation of how we should do this. This is a thoughtful way of doing this, and it's looking at it and coming back and saying, this is what we should do. We all respect the legislative order and the work that he does and his office does, and this would give us doing this and fixing the problem as we all want to do here. But it doesn't do it and then look at how we're going to do it and then possibly come back and do it a second time. Let's have the legislative order look at it and go forward. And that's what this amendment does, and it gets with some of the issues and some of the problems that are going on, because we are all appalled at some of the stuff that happened. We all are appalled at looking at preferential treatment to different people. None of us like that. But this gives us a deliberative approach of looking at how to fix the situation going forward and not changing it and then looking at it and then changing possibly again. So, Mr. Speaker, with that, I would like a roll call on my amendment. And please vote green.
Roll call has been requested. Leave your hands up, please. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion on the DE5 amendment. The member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Nelson, I appreciate your efforts in trying to get a handle on this issue. It is a big issue. It impacts all of us here at the Capitol. However, I do take issue with your amendment in a couple of ways. First of all, in your amendment, you would be eliminating the portion that allows us to take the revenue from the suites and use that revenue to pay down the debt that would benefit all taxpayers in the state of Minnesota. On top of that, your amendment also strips out the language that would allow us to recover the costs from those that were friends and family and had abused our stadium and abused our trust. Meaning, in this piece of legislation that we have right now, we try to recover the cost of the tickets, the food, the parking, all the wine and dine provisions of those individuals, the 61% that were allowed to use these stadium suites for their own personal uses and gain. And your amendment would strip that provision out. And for that reason, I would encourage members to vote red.
Further discussion on the DE5 amendment? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 34 ayes and 95 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 778, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion on House File 778 as amended. The member from Hennepin, Representative Davney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Representative Anderson, you're going to have an awful lot of green votes on this board today. Minnesotans are angry over what has happened at the stadium. I'm angry. We all should be. I'm not sure that they were looking for the giveaway to the gift to the Minnesota Vikings that you have in the bill that Representative Loeffler tried to remove. I'm not sure that they were looking for the political plums to the leaders of the four caucuses in the legislature that you have in the bill. But you've got a good start here. The Star Tribune, to their credit, we don't often give reporters much credit these days, did good work diving into this issue. Other news outlets as well. The OLA, of course, did solid work on establishing a base, as they always do. But I want to take members back. Well, I'll be interested to see the passage of this bill going forward, Representative Anderson, and how, when the city of Minneapolis acts on the bill, as it will under our Constitution, as you know, this will have to go back to the city of Minneapolis for local approval because it changes material aspects of the stadium bill that was passed in 2012, and that required local approval. So our state constitution will require that this go back there, and I'll be interested. I've not had conversations with my city as to how they feel about, with city council members, with how they feel. I do know there's concern, members, that Representative Anderson described the U.S. Bank Stadium as the largest public investment in state history. And she's right. But it's also, I think, the largest city of Minneapolis investment. So let me just remind members that the taxpayers of the city of Minneapolis are on the hook for $150 million for the construction of this stadium. On top of that, our sales tax portion of it is captured until 2046. That's a long time from now. And that was in the stadium bill to help provide part of the $6 million annual contribution for operations and maintenance, and $1.5 million in an improvements reserve. There should be a reserve. It should be well funded so that the building can be maintained and the Vikings don't come back for yet another gift in a few years' time. But that's all coming out of the city of Minneapolis. And yet, under this bill, we reduce the representation of the very people who are paying for a significant portion of this stadium. I think that when we give our word as a state, when we make a commitment to the people of this state, that we should keep that. We're not doing that with this bill. We're doing some good things. We can just do better. We can keep our commitments. We can respect all the taxpayers of the state. And we can, I'm hoping, come back from conference with a bill that's worth supporting, that protects the people who are helping pay for this, the residents of Minneapolis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House File 778. A member from Hennepin, Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, something needs to be done with what's going on at the stadium with the Stadium Authority. But members, as my delete all amendment said, we should look at it first and do it. Most marriage counselors will tell you that if you're angry at your spouse, you shouldn't go to bed angry and you shouldn't make decisions in anger. We're all appalled. Our public is angry with what's happened over there and some of the decisions, some of the things that have happened. But oftentimes, we in the legislature pass legislation reacting to something that happens because the public is appalled, the public is angry, the public's up in arms, and oftentimes when we do that, we pass bad legislation. And some of the worst legislation I've ever seen passed in my life, going back, is when the legislature does something in reaction to a news story, in reaction to something that's gotten everybody riled up about something, and we rush out and do something in the legislature and pass legislation, and then we end up having to fix it later on. And so, members, that is why in my delete all amendment that I had that went down, I said we had the legislative auditor look at it and look at the structure and look at the ways we can fix it and come back to us with the report so we can do it in a slow, thoughtful, deliberative process. But that didn't happen. So today we're going to pass legislation that we're reacting to something and moving forward and reacting to something that went wrong and everyone's mad at, and we're not thinking it through clearly, and we're doing it in response to that, and I think that's the wrong thing to do. So members, I'm going to vote red. I don't care if everybody else does, but I'm going to vote red because I don't think this is the way we should be going.
Any further discussion on House File 778? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to clear up a couple of misperceptions with this bill. First of all, we are not required under this piece of legislation actually to have this go to the city of Minneapolis. That only applied to the one segment of the bill, and this segment does not apply to having the city of Minneapolis approve this. So the city of Minneapolis is not going to be voting on this bill, this provision at all. Second of all, I sure hope that we as lawmakers react to public outrage. I think that that's our job. We are the voice of the people. And when the people said, this is ridiculous, when you have 3 suites that are being used for friends and family, when you are having $32,000 spent on food alone in one season, when you have the board chair using her position to budge in line in front of everybody else to buy seat licenses, which will appreciate in value, I see that as a huge problem, and that we should be responding to the people of Minnesota. Folks, we have an opportunity here to kind of set the mold, set the model, not just for Minnesota, not for just the other stadiums that we have here in the state of Minnesota, but also for the nation. Because unfortunately, this problem is not unique to us. And Representative Nelson, I spent a lot of time on this piece of legislation. I spent the entire month of December reaching out to the other stadium authorities to say, how do you do this? How does it work in your world? How does it work with the rest of the nation? And how can we do it differently to make sure that this facility is not abused? It was touted as the People's Stadium. Today, we're returning it to the people.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Clerk will close the roll. There being 122 ayes and 7 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. Without objection, we will revert to messages from the Senate. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate, Mr. Speaker. I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file, herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendments to concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House file number 434, an act relating to natural resources. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Fabian moves that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House file number 434 and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Senate.
I recognize the member from Roseau, Representative Fabian, who will explain the Senate amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the wetland mitigation bill that we had here recently. We voted it off the House floor, 126 to nothing. It's non-controversial, but it's still very, very important to a lot of local government units who've got road projects that are going to be starting up this spring. Might be one of your townships or a county. This is the money that's needed in order to be able to acquire the wetland credits that are needed in order to move forward with these projects. There's $5 million here to kickstart this. There is some language in the bill that allows for some, I'll say, trading or exchanging from the different bank areas. Nothing has changed in the bill from what we intended here coming off the House floor, with the exception of Section 3 of the bill. On the second page, 2.16 through 2.26. And I also point out above that on lines 2.13 and 2.14 that this is a one-time appropriation that's available until June 30th of 2019, and it's effective upon final enactment. And with that, members, I will cede to Representative Cornish to explain what happened in Section 3 over in the Senate, if it's all right, Mr. Speaker.
He will yield. The member from Blue Earth, Representative Cornish.
Mr. Speaker and members, Section 3 is addressed to the devastating fire we had in Madelia that you've probably all heard about. It was in the, we passed it in the tax bill last year. The figures have changed a little bit here. It's a total of $1,696,000 is appropriated to the Department of Public Safety to put out in remediation grants to the city of Madelia and to the Watonwan County. $1.4 million to the city of Madelia, $296,000 to Watonwan County, and then it describes in 2.22 through 2.26 how that money is to be spent or sent out on grants with directions there. The reason we did it this way was Senator Rosen added this on to the bill in the Senate so that we wouldn't basically have to wait till the tax bill, and added it on here in a direct appropriation so that it fit onto this bill. The part that's missing here from the proposal from last year would be the sales tax exemption for construction materials retroactive, and that still has to be addressed. But this direct appropriation, or the money going to the Department of Public Safety, will be directed towards the city of Madelia and Watonwan County for relief. And basically the reason is The Madelia was a thriving business. Main Street, all the businesses were occupied. None of them were shuttered. Very economically sound plan there with all the businesses. And what happened was that 8 businesses were virtually wiped out. So the contractor joined with the businessmen and putting together this huge complex building with a brick front. Did all the businesses got into this building, rebuilt Main Street, and at their own risk, with just a hope and a promise that, or hope and a prayer that the legislature would come back and help them out so they could realize their investment sooner. So that's what you have before, and I'll stand for any questions if you wish.
Any further discussion on the Senate amendments? The member from Ramsey, Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm speaking against concurrence. I voted for this bill when it went out. I think several of us were a little nervous because we were moving some of the things that had been in the bonding bill, the local roads wetland replacement being one of them, and it was moving alone. And we were afraid that this kind of thing would start to happen, that in the concurrence, the Senate amendments that also deal with the fire in Madelia. All of those were in the bonding bill. And bonding bills are the hardest bills to pass. It requires a supermajority, and it requires we kind of all hang together. And all of the needs we have all over the state are in that bill. We try to be fair to everyone. But as soon as you start moving some of these away, you potentially lose votes. And all of you who are waiting have to worry that this sends a signal that that bigger infrastructure bill is never going to come. These needs, these 2 needs, have just gone to the head of the line for cash before we have had a budget discussion. And all of those other needs, higher education, I'm just looking at members around the room who have been waiting some time, the Education Village in Winona, the wastewater infrastructure, corrections, the state security hospital, all state agencies, projects important to so many in this room. And the risk we run as we begin to let some of them go to the head of the line and get the first cash, that bigger bonding bill will never come, or if it does, that it just has lost too many votes and is too hard to pass. So I'm voting against concurrence, and I'm voting against this bill as a way of saying we have to hang together on infrastructure needs, and we have to be fair to everyone, to all parts of the state. Those of you who aren't reflected here, I hope from both parties that you think seriously about this. Is this fair?
Further discussion on the Senate amendments. The member from Ramsey, Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will Representative Cornish yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Cornish, I can't remember the exact date, but you came to the Jobs and Energy and Growth, and well, I don't think it's a Jobs Committee, but that's another story, with a bill for, I think it was $101,000. And in this bill, it's $1,696,000. Is there a difference from what that bill in the Energy Committee was versus the bill that was in the Public Safety Division, and what were they? And does that mean that you don't need to come back for the $101,000?
Representative Cornish.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Mahoney, the $101,000 was actually originally going to be bonding, but then we did the direct appropriation that came through your committee, or the committee that you were on. The $101,000 is included in this number, so I won't be coming back for that. And to the other point, this wasn't in the bonding bill, Representative Hausman, it was in the tax bill. So it was a direct appropriation in the tax bill last year, not the bonding bill. So we're not getting ahead in the bonding bill. So.
Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this isn't really a question, but maybe it is a question if Representative Davids would yield.
He will yield. Representative Mahoney.
Representative Davids, you know, I've sat on the tax committee or the property tax committee for a couple of years before I wanted to shoot myself. And You've got property tax abatement in this bill. Is that something that should go through your committee, or is not, if they're going to use cash, it doesn't have to go through your committee?
Member from Fillmore, Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Mahoney. This bill did go through the tax committee. It had a hearing this year, I believe. Yeah, it did. It did. It had a hearing this year, so it did go through the tax committee.
Representative Mahoney.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, I think Madelia really does need the help. I think it's an important, it's good for us to do this for communities around the state, whether it's in Madelia or when the Zambroda River floods or when a tornado goes through North Minneapolis. This is the duty that we should be doing here, helping communities recover. I'm just kind of surprised that it grew 16 times or better, or maybe it's 160 times what you brought 2 weeks ago. So it's quite an inflationary moment, but I think this is something we need to do for Madelia. I hope they contract the dollars and come back to us and tell us that they don't need any more money. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion on the Senate amendments? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to concur with the Senate amendments say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by Senate.
Third reading, House File Number 434, as amended by the Senate.
Third reading as amended by the Senate. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 119 ayes and 10 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by Senate and its title agreed to. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there's no objection, we'll take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail. There are a series of motions at the desk. The clerk will report the motions.
Hoppe moves that House File Number 68, now on the General Register, be re-referred to the Committee on Commerce and Regulatory Reform.
Recognize the member from Carver, Representative Hoppe, to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is my motion. House File 68 is the 3.2% alcohol labeling bill. All the bill does is it says that instead of just having the 3.2 labeling on top of the can, this would have allowed it to be on the side of the can. It's a non-controversial bill. We moved it to the floor as quickly as we could in case we needed a vehicle for any big alcohol bill that was somewhat controversial. We didn't need that. We have a couple of things we want to do to fix it, and then we will bring it back after a short stay in the Commerce Committee. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate your support, member support, and be willing to stand for questions.
Any discussion on the Hoppe motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails.
Albright moves that House File Number 1195, now on the General Register, be re-referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services Finance.
Recognize the member from Scott, Representative Albright, to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. House File 1195 needs to come back to Finance. This is a bill that deals with psychiatric treatment for minors. I've spoken with the chair, and he agrees with the decision to bring it back into committee before we hear it on the floor. Appreciate your support. Thank you.
Any discussion on the Albright motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The The motion prevails.
Salk moves that House File Number 1838 be recalled from the Committee on Government Operations and Election Policy and be re-referred to the Committee on Public Safety and Security Policy and Finance.
Recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Salk, to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is a bill that is the Department of Revenue's bill talking about the dates and fixing dates and the notifications when somebody is doing a tax workout. And there's a number of things. It's mostly just technical changes. It's being re-referred from operations, and I've talked to both chairs.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails.
Torkelson moves that House File Number 1994 be recalled from the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources Policy and Finance and be re-referred to the Committee on Agricultural Policy.
Recognize the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson, to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chair Anderson requested a chance to hear this bill. I've cleared it with Chair Fabian, and everybody's fine.
Discussion on the Torkelson motion. Representative Hansen.
Well, not everybody, Mr. Speaker. Members and Representative Torkelson, I think it's important to describe what's going on here because we heard a bill in Environment Finance 1466 that was referred to taxes from Environment Finance and then I believe was mistakenly sent to Ag Policy and was calendared for Ag Policy. And Representative Torkelson, is this a clone of 1466 as amended? If Representative Torkelson would yield.
The member from Brown, Representative Torkelson, he will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the question, Representative Hansen. This is not a clone of 1466. The language of 1994 is part of 1466, but 1994 is only the policy portion of the bill.
Representative Hansen.
And Mr. Speaker and Representative Torkelson, if you'd continue to yield. So,
he would love to.
Is 1466 no longer moving, or is it your intent to hear 1994, the portion in the Ag Policy, and then that would suffice as the hearing of that content, and then maybe this is a follow-up with Representative David, but the reason I'm asking these questions is I've actually had constituents and folks from around Minnesota ask, how do we track this particular bill? How do we track 1466? And if 1466 is no longer moving, and this is going to be moving in its stead, or if this is checking off a box and then it's going to go to taxes, I want this on the record how this is going to work so that people can actually track what's going on.
Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1466 is going to taxes just as it was passed out of the Environment Committee. I don't believe that Ag actually has jurisdiction of 1994, but because it does affect a lot of farmers and other folks involved with agriculture, thought it was appropriate that we have a hearing in Ag Policy so that questions about the bill can be asked and answered. The intention is that 1994 will be re-referred back to Environment.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if Representative Fabian would just, for the record, indicate that it would be coming back to this committee after it's heard or passed out of, or is it just a FYI hearing, or is there actually going to be action taken in Ag Policy?
Member from, he will yield. Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I can't address the issue of the FYI, but I can address the issue that, yes, indeed, it will be coming back to the Environment Committee.
Representative Hansen.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. And would Representative Anderson P. yield as the Chair of Ag Policy?
He will yield. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Anderson, is it your intent, is this an informational hearing or is this an action hearing where it would be moved?
Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. No, this is an actual hearing, and from my standpoint, we wanted to hear about the buffer policy, not so much concerned in our committee about the payments to counties and things like that. So that's why we're hearing the part of the bill, or the bill that deals specifically with
with the buffer provisions, and it will be an actual hearing.
Representative Hansen.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the patience on this. It's just to try to, we've got two very similar bills moving. If Representative Fabian would yield for one final question.
He will yield. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Fabian, then would it be your intent, if this passed out, would this bill, would 1994 go to taxes, or would it be held over, or maybe you haven't figured out a path yet?
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not 100% sure if we've figured out a path for that yet, but I know that I'll be working closely with the author and yourself, for that matter, if we need to.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Motion prevails.
Eklund moves that House File Number 2059 be recalled from the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources Policy and Finance and be re-referred to the Committee on Taxes.
Recognize the member from Kuchiching, Representative Eklund, to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is my motion. This bill originally went to environment. It's got nothing to do with forest practices or anything like that. The Environment Committee needs to see. I talked to both Chair Fabian and Chair Daniels, and they're both okay with this.
Any discussion on the motion? The member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Eklund and Chair Davids. We've had a discussion about this, and I would support the move over to the Tax Committee.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Eklund yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Eklund, is this the tax provision relating to the Blandon Foundation easement that you and I discussed?
Representative Eklund.
Yes, it is.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Motion prevails.
Kreshaw moves that House File Number 2140 be recalled from the Committee on Health and Human Services Reform and be re-referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services Finance.
Recognize the member from Morrison, Representative Kreshaw, to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a bill that we were working on in an informational meeting with Health and Human Services Reform. We had an opioid task force there, but we could not get the bill drafted in time. We were trying to write it with what was going on in the process. I've talked to both chairs, Chair Dean and Chair Schumacher, and also have some buy-in from members on the other side. Thank you, Representative Murphy and Representative Liebling. We're going to re-refer this to Health and Human Finances so we can keep it moving. I would appreciate your support.
Any discussion on the Kreshaw motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion prevails. Is that it? Announcements. Recognize the member from Carver, Representative Hoppe, for announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'd like to remind all of you, and you should have gotten something in your email, that this coming Wednesday night, 2 nights from now, is the annual Minnesota Outdoor Heritage Alliance Banquet. It will be at the Holiday Inn East Hotel. We always talk about how we don't have enough opportunities to get together and let you all buy me a beer. Well, here you go. So members, we'll have something else sent out, a further reminder, but just a little verbal warning reminder, this coming Wednesday night, the Moha Banquet. Thank you.
Member from Blue Earth, Representative Considine, announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This Wednesday is also Mankato Day at the Capitol, along with the State Chamber and several other chambers. I hope you all will join us at the Intercontinental Hotel from 4:30 to 6:30. Thank you.
Announcements. The member from Ramsey, Representative Moran.
Thank you, Speaker. The Posse Caucus will be meeting immediately after session at 400 North.
Any further announcements? Representative Gunther.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Legacy Committee will convene after caucus and Republicans are caucusing, and we will also have pizza while we hear everybody's bills, because the pizza's already here. So if you got time, if you aren't caucusing, go eat pizza if you're on the committee. And if you got a bill before the committee, we will start as soon as we can, and we'll do both at the same time.
Announcements. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 12:15 p.m. Tuesday, March 7th, 2017.
Representative Pepin moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 12:15 p.m. Tuesday, March 7th, 2017. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Republican members, we are caucusing immediately after session today in room 120. That will be before the other caucus. Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Pepin moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails, and the House stands adjourned until 12:15 p.m. Tuesday, March 7th, 2017.